Welcome to the third instalment of Coaching Conundrums podcast. I'm Jake Gifford. Thank you for tuning in again. Hope you enjoyed the last one and found it insightful. I hope you've been using the model as well. I'd really appreciate it if you gave me feedback and let us know how you're getting on, whether it's regards to your coaching, whether it's regards to your training, nutrition, anything like that. Just kind of utilizing that model and really seeing how you found it, even if it was just for minute things. And just once you've used it, just keep using it, keep reviewing it. Don't stop using it. You will always use it as a tool. You'll keep coming back to it, even for the same things, even for the same systems, the same practices, from coaching to training, nutrition. Today, what I want to talk about is a little bit more about goal setting, but going into a little bit more depth, talking about creating a system. A lot of the time in terms of training, nutrition, we heavily rely on systems, but when it comes to goal setting, a lot of the time we tend to resort to either SMART goals, or we don't really follow a system. We just kind of have a quick light-hearted conversation maybe, or we think we've established goals when in fact actually we haven't done it as well as we could have. With regards to goals, everyone has different goals, and everyone has different means in the way in which they achieve these goals. Like I said before, they can be deemed simple. Some say, for example, adding 20 kilos in your squat in 12 months. For a beginner, that sounds relatively simple, but as we go into it, as we start on training, as we progress through the weeks, through the months, a lot of the times we encounter barriers, we encounter problems that make achieving these goals a lot harder than they need to be. For some people, not for everyone. We're not talking about elite. Well, sometimes in some cases elite athletes, but we're talking about people that have never used the gym before, people that have used the gym for a while, but aren't necessarily at the top of the gene pool. Well, it's going to be 99% of the population, really. So going back to goals, you wouldn't really spend 5 or 10 minutes designing a training or nutrition program, right? So when it comes to goal setting, the same can be said. You don't want to spend 5-10 minutes just going through it with your client. This is stuff that can take hours. This is sometimes the stuff that can take weeks, that can take months. Goals aren't just about putting on kilos on your squat, on your deadlift, on your bench, on the track, things like, or any lift, or even trying to lose X amount of weight or put on weight in however many months. It's essentially, goal setting is an intricate process which can either define success or failure. We can identify and utilize systems really to try and help us stay on track, help us, because more often than not, if you say you have someone for 12 months, not 12 months, 12 weeks, goals may change. They may come to you for a certain goal. However, 4 weeks down the line, their goals may have changed slightly. But we always make the assumption, okay, this is what they initially came to me for, and that's what I'm going to deliver. Whilst that may be okay with some industries, where outside the fitness industry, outside the health industry, that may not necessarily work for it. People change. People are different. They have feelings, thoughts, emotions. They're impacted heavily by the environment around them, social interactions. These are things we need to consider when building, identifying, and utilizing a system to help our clients perform as effectively as possible and achieve their goals as quickly or as effectively as possible, keeping them motivated as long as they can, because at the end of the day, motivation levels change. They'll spike and they'll dip. People will go through different stages as well, which I'll explain at another time. It's a whole series of podcasts in themselves with regards to motivation. Too many people try and simplify it. You're either motivated or you're not, which isn't exactly true, because whilst there's some people that are motivated to stuff in fitness, you're motivated to go to the gym, you may not necessarily be motivated in terms of your business, in terms of relationships, little things like that, which people don't really think about. So what we're going to do is we're going to try and identify stages during this podcast, see how you can utilize them with regards to both yourself and both to your clients. And ultimately, it's all about communication. It's about honesty, and it's about being realistic as well. So with regards to goals, we tend to go through a first stage, which is essentially preparation. So during preparation, we try to understand that we need to plan. We need that goal setting takes time, and that we can't necessarily jump to conclusions and go, okay, then, yeah, sure, that goal's absolutely perfect for you. We're gonna go with that. Doesn't matter. We're gonna do it this way. We're not really fussed about how you feel or how you feel, how you work. We're just focused on my training system, my nutrition system, and we're gonna go with that. So when we go to preparation, of course, understanding that this takes time, but also we need to assess the abilities and needs of an individual. So it's more than just about going, okay, they need this, or they need to increase their squat by 20 kilos. I'm going to keep going back to the squat because it's kind of a lot of people as a general term, if they're in this industry, would quite like adding 20 kilos to the squat or something like that. So it's also understanding that where they want to go and their abilities now. So some people want to squat 20 kilos in 12 weeks, yet they don't have the capacity for it. They don't have the mobility for it. So practically, it may not be suitable, this goal. So when we are assessing the abilities and needs of the individual, we need to understand that this can be limited to what we know about the client at the time. So we may not necessarily know that they don't have the mobility squat, they don't have the capacity squat. They may be beyond that. We don't know, and that 20 kilos may be a very short-term goal, and they could go 30, 40, 50 in a dream world. But essentially, we're limited by the knowledge when a client comes to us of what we know, or sometimes we're limited by ourselves and our knowledge of training and nutrition. Sometimes we may not necessarily understand why we can't improve our mobility no matter what we try and no matter what we read. We may misinterpret information. We may take it out of context. The information may be wrong to begin with, but on face value, it may seem right. So it's important to not only understand and build that knowledge, but also to identify the required skills that are needed during a specific activity or the goal in mind. So again, if we went to things like the hand clean, power clean, exercise, many Olympic lifts, assessing that we need more than just hip mobility, we need ankle mobility, we need shoulder mobility. We need to assess whether they've achieved these first before that we can even consider these exercises. Same with things like someone that's seeking fat loss, so they want to lose 10 pounds, they want to lose 15 pounds, but we're struggling in terms of whether they have whether they have certain disorders, whether they have certain illnesses that we can't personally deal with, and that they maybe have to refer to someone else. We maybe have to, if we are qualified enough, may have to work around. So sometimes wanting to lose 10 pounds for the average person might be relatively easy, provided that they're fully understanding what it takes, and sometimes it might be a little bit more complicated. So we need to understand both the abilities and needs of an individual, and also the required skills to achieve whatever they want to achieve. And then from there, essentially, what we can do is we can rate them based on that, and then we can start preparing and thinking, and almost it's quite good to brainstorm goals and go, okay, then this might not be suitable at this stage. We can put it, rather than 12 weeks, we may look at it a 12-month period, and then just focus on more at the forefront. So whilst many of us come to us for fat loss, for strength gains, for reducing injury, goals are these are only very narrow goals, and they're not always, they shouldn't necessarily be the only goals. So when it comes to performance goals, especially, performance goals aren't everything. And to truly enhance your sense of well-being and to encourage motivation for long term, we need to try and set or achieve goals in various areas, because not all the time you're not going to be able to. Sometimes to even go up a few kilos in squat, bench, deadlift, or any exercise, it may take years. And ultimately we all know that consistency is a huge factor, and maintaining motivation is another huge factor in how we achieve our goals. Because if you're not willing to put in the work over a couple of years to achieve that X amount of kilos, chances are you're going to quit. But also in terms of goals in general, everyone has a different reason for participating. So not everyone. Sometimes lifting is more about than building muscle, dropping body fat, getting stronger. Sometimes sometimes people view it as a release, just a release from daily life. It elevates your mood, it reduces stress, it kind of gives you discipline, gives you it gives you tools in other aspects of your life as well. And these are important to understand in order to get the most out of yourself and your client. So trying to understand that it's more than just lifting more, building muscle, dropping body fat. If we can get people to see the benefits of exercise and a healthy diet, that's more than face value. That's more than, sometimes I'm going to put it, superficial, because more often than not, this industry can be quite superficial when it really shouldn't be. We should all kind of praise people. Not everyone needs to have a six-pack. Not everyone needs to be ripped. If you want to achieve that, that's fine. We shouldn't condone someone for wanting to achieve that, but then we shouldn't condone someone that's at a healthy body weight and that's achieved their goal they want to achieve. So yeah, goals can't be set in a vacuum either. So what I mean by goals being set in a vacuum, we should focus less on trying to. When it comes to, let me start again. So when it comes to beginners, especially, a lot of the time we see them for a few hours a week during training sessions. They may never have trained before, and probably the most they've ever done is probably yo-yo dieted. They've probably gone up and down in weight. They've probably tried utilizing. They've done things like Weight Watchers, Slimming World, all these kind of low restricted diets that work in the short term but not necessarily the long term. So what I mean by goals not being set in a vacuum is sometimes when we try and educate people in healthy nutrition and try and get them to do it outside, we often find barriers where people don't commit. They say, oh, sorry, I couldn't follow your meal plans. I couldn't follow your nutrition advice, even just small things like that. Perhaps at this stage, because they aren't committed enough on their own. And that's okay. I think people in this industry need to learn and accept that not everyone will be committed as you. And that's not a reason to not help someone. Instead, what we need to do is we need to focus less on what goes outside the sessions and focus more on getting the sessions right. So rather, for someone that's never exercised, being able to attend the gym 3 times a week is brilliant. It should be a huge focus. The fact that them going to the gym 3 hours a week is going to make a big impact on their life, both in terms of health and body composition to some extent. And that is more often than not a big deal for someone. And whether it's not a big deal for you is fine. But you need to understand that everyone has different goals, everyone has different aims. And really that you need to understand that while something is small for you, might be huge for someone else. And if we can then encourage regular exercise and encourage them to be disciplined in that sense, push hard, really change their perception of training, then what we can do is then we start focusing on other parts like nutrition as well, focusing on just changing small factors in their food, or just tweaking macros or introducing things like that. It's not doesn't mean to say that you shouldn't focus nutrition to start with anyone, because that's not true. People are at different stages, but it's understanding that if someone's not at that stage, it's fine. It's not a reflection on yourself as a coach. In fact, rejecting them or going flat out, just not training them, teaching them. Sometimes it's up to you. If you don't want to train them, if you don't want the stress, you don't want the hassle, then that's fine. But ultimately, coaching's more than essentially following a plan. It's more than putting together a training and nutrition plan and following it from start to finish. That doesn't make you a coach. That just makes you a gatherer of knowledge and a systematic applier. Coaching's more is to do with people. So in an industry, we want to try and reduce obesity, and it may be a case of small steps. It may be a case of people starting out, not even going to the gym. This won't be the stage for you, but previous stages, you'll get lifestyle coaches that just get people walking, that people jogging, that get people outside, get people moving. And then once they've achieved that, then then they go on to training in the gym. Then they go on to training with you, and then it may be after that for training for a few weeks. Then we introduce other things, and that's how we get the ball rolling. You don't always when it comes to things like business, when it comes to relationships, you don't always jump into the deep end. So why when it comes for something, especially when it's a new experience for someone. So when it comes to someone that's never done this before, it's not always necessarily a good thing. People aren't always going to respond well to being pushed in the deep end. And some people are going to resist you rather than be inspired of you, trust you, follow you. I mean, this is someone that whilst they are paying for your services, you just met. And trust is something that's earned, not given, as well as respect. So we try and look at strategies that can change the way in which a person stays motivated to achieve their goals. This is something for another time. There are plenty of strategies with regards to trying to use various types of motivation. In fact, if we look at the various stages, both intrinsic, extrinsic motivation, to put it simply, internal, external factors. I know a lot of people in this industry have criticised the NHS for rewarding people with money for losing weight. I know people get stressed by that. I was originally against that. I thought it was totally out of order. And then slowly over time, as I self-reflected, I thought, actually, that's a pretty good idea. That's a pretty good way to get someone motivated and stay motivated. Because at the end of the day, a lot of us are motivated by money in one way or another, even if it's just a few extra quid in our pocket to share with a family, share with friends. So really, when we go into motivation, talk in detail, we're talking to strategies and trying to help people keep motivated as well as increase motivation in order to perform as effectively as they could. So if you move on to the second stage now, which is education and acquisition. So rather than us giving them a set plan, saying go follow it, that this will be how you achieve your goal, we need to try and teach people in actually achieving their goals. And we're trying to identify essentially what is an effective and an ineffective goal. We need to teach them how to set goals, what are good goals, what are bad goals, This can be done through formal or informal meetings. You can spend time, seriously, spend time sitting down with clients, and just spending a half an hour, just going through these goals, trying to teach people. This is your current goal, but how can we make it more effective so that you're more likely to stick to it? This is your current goal. You may not necessarily achieve it now. You may necessarily achieve it at a later date. What we need to do is just kind of really get people to understand that not everything's possible, but also it's just trying to go, okay, then how can we make sure that you stick to this as much as possible and you don't fall off the wagon? Because a lot of times people will go, oh, yeah, I can do that easy. 2 weeks in, oh my God, this is the hardest thing in my life. So really, it's looking at teaching. Really, coaching is about teaching and educating people. That is one of the main things. It's not just giving them information. It's helping them understand, giving them context when and how they can apply it. It's not just going, okay, you eat this at this time because I said so, or giving them an absolute saying, okay, you eat this at this time, otherwise you'll break down muscle tissue, otherwise you'll get fat, which is not educating someone. It's not giving them context. It's not giving them context, not giving them enough evidence. It's just kind of a statement you made, not necessarily a fact either. So goal setting really isn't something that's finalized over one sitting. So these formal or informal meetings should happen on a regular basis. Same with you do measurements, caliper testing, body fat testing on a week or even 1 rep max testing on a regular basis, whether it's 2, 4, 6, 8, 12 weeks, however many. These meetings require follow-ups. They need to be regular so that we know or can understand that these people have understood what we're saying, understand that, or know that our teaching is appropriate to them, and also that they're staying on track with their goals. Because if they don't feel they're staying on track with their goals, then chances are they're not going to stay on their goals. They're going to give up. They're going to stop. They're going to leave you. They're not going to want to. At the end of the day, if you're not getting the results, or if they don't feel like you're helping enough, then they'll leave, irrespective of whether you consider it's your fault or whether you consider it's theirs. So going back to the beginning, goals may be simple upon face value. So, but as mentioned before, it can be difficult to both plan and to adhere to these goals, especially with those that lack motivation or are very new to the process. So if we go back to having less focus on nutrition and more on training and things like that, if we can really identify, I know we've got short-term, medium, long-term goals, using smart tools and things like that, but if we can outline and focus on one goal primarily and the steps to achieve it, that may be more effective for someone, especially a beginner, than multiple goals initially. So whilst someone is coming to us for fat loss and they want to lose 20 pounds in X amount of time, that's great. That's one goal, and we should try and focus on that. Depending on the person, you can either break it down into smaller goals, maybe, rather than saying, okay, we're just going to get on with this. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. We're going to do this. This is how we're going to do it. We'll go, okay, then that's your end goal. Let's put it to one side for a minute. Let's focus on now. Let's focus what you can do next week. This is going to be your one goal, your sole goal. That's all you're going to think about. And this is how we're going to achieve it. This may be essentially more effective than setting multiple goals, than sometimes setting performance goals, sometimes setting psychological goals, sometimes setting body composition goals may be too much for someone. They may be perfect for someone. So it really depends on the person. It depends on your knowledge. It depends on no one can really give you a finite answer. You can look at all the research you want. It won't really help you until you look at that person, talk to that person, and understand that person, and how they essentially tick, how they respond best So it may be worth kind of implementing a few goals at one time and then just taking some out if necessary, if they're struggling to adhere. And kind of sometimes it's better in terms of body composition to really focus on performance goals, because essentially if they start to perform better, they start improving the gym, then over time their body composition should improve. Not necessarily always the case, but 9 times out of 10 it should. So yeah, it's really just trying to have a clear-cut focus on one thing at one time, not trying to chase 2 rabbits all the time. It's just really just one after the other, and really focusing on just really focusing on, or creating a hierarchy of importance in terms of time. So having certain, whilst saying losing 20 pounds in X amount of weeks is probably the most important thing to them, it may not be the most important thing at this stage. It may be a case of just going to the gym, just doing 3 sessions a week being the most important thing. Maybe it's just going to the gym once a week. Maybe it's just walking or things like that. Or not necessarily, you won't have people at that early stage. You'll probably have people come to you and they'll be wanting to train. But really, if you can get someone to focus on training, really improving training, then other goals are going to slowly slot into place, provided that they're consistent, provided they enjoy their sessions, provided that they have a feel of a sense of achievement. And that's something we'll go into as well, is creating essentially a motivational climate, a climate in which someone really wants to achieve, really wants to keep moving forward, and really wants to stay consistent. Because the moment we lose that, then everything goes to shit. You may as well kind of strip everything back, because they're not going to follow your advice on nutrition. They're not going to appreciate your advice on training. They're not motivated. It doesn't matter how much knowledge you give someone. It's up to them whether they want to take it or not. Okay, so if we go to the 3rd stage now. So this is implementation, goal follow-up, and evaluation. So in order to determine whether goals are realistic and appropriate for the individual, once we've gone back to the previous 2 stages, we then want to evaluate them, check out the pros and cons, really identify whether these maximize the ability. These goals will help maximize the ability of your client or yourself. Not necessarily just going, okay, not really thinking about it. What I mean by that is, goals should really be assessed, and really trying to get it in my head is trying to get it into words, actually, is you want to bring the best out of everyone. And if your goals aren't effective enough or realistic enough, if they don't challenge you in some way or form, you may not necessarily bring out the best in someone. It is really trying about maximizing performance, maximizing adherence, maximizing motivation, maximizing their performance in the gym, maximizing the consistency with the nutrition, things like that. And these goals should be given to these people to so that they form an emotional attachment to it. And we're trying to assess whether they're appropriate for this person. So 40 kilo squat for someone that's been training for 10 years, and the squat for 10 years effectively may not be realistic in 12 weeks. There may not be the same for a beginner. Increasing your squat by 40 kilos in the first 10 weeks may not be appropriate either if you can't bloody squat. But it's getting to that point where you could squat and squat effectively. So maximizing or making the most of their strength, essentially. So if they're good, if they're good at split squats and lunges and things like that, utilize those to maximize and get the most out of those in order to achieve a decent squat. So these procedures and these evaluations should be put in place to which allows so that you can keep on top of them as well. So, what I mean by that is essentially all with regards to goals, with regards to evaluation, with regards to implementation, with regards to planning and discussing with someone, this procedure, this making this time to discuss, create, build, reassess these goals should be made for time. You should be able to keep on top of it. So you should take, whether if you're a coach, you should be taking or booking out regular time slots in order to evaluate both. Well, no, your clients' goals on a one-to-one basis. So you should be booking at least an hour a week for them to maybe not necessarily train, or an hour every 2 weeks, 3 weeks, to come in, kind of assess those goals, sit down, really establish, find out where they want to go still, how they're reaching their goals. This can be done if you're doing online clients. You can do it exactly the same. Sitting down with them on Skype, kind of going, okay, we've got a systematic plan here. We're following it. How do you feel you're doing? Do I feel I need to progress in this? Progress in this aspect or progress in that aspect? Do I feel that my goals have changed? Do I feel that I've already feel like I'm surpassing those goals and need more in order to stay motivated? Because someone that's really their ultimate goal is body composition, but they've got performance goals, they may lose that motivation once they've achieved that 20 kilo increase in their squat. Don't know why 20 kilos is a magic number, I said before, but it's just something I use. So making sure you book time out for both yourself and your own goals, and both the client's goals as well, is really important, just to kind of continue assessing on these progressions. And this is done just through testing. So testing and honest feedback. So really communication and honesty is the key when it comes to a lot of goals, not just, okay, they've increased their 1RM, because 2-3 weeks down the line, their motivation may have just gone, or something may just come up, where the point that they just go off tangent. So on top of this, really, it's just in this stage and following up people is providing support and encouragement, which I feel a lot of the time, or more often than not, people don't truly use. Specifically, support and encouragement should be private in a way. I do believe it should be private. It should be one-to-one, not a case of publicly always displaying it on Facebook, not always publicly displaying it on any other social media sites, because it's not necessarily beneficial to the actual client. This is something I'll go at a later point in time, but it's making sure that we really encourage people on an individual basis, and working off how they really like to receive encouragement, not necessarily patronizing, whether it's support, whether it's even just something like a pat on the back, whether it's just a smile, whether it's just a well done, continuing, even if it's just like maybe a reward system, if you wanted to create something like that. I know a lot of coaches go, dislike using reward system because they're related to Pavlov's dog, but that's not necessarily true. Reward systems are quite useful and they should be integrated. If you're not using them, then you're really missing out, and it's probably why some of your clients don't necessarily adhere to what you're saying. So on top of this, it is a case of, after we've encouraged them, support, and looked at the goals and evaluated them, it's also a constant reevaluation. So goal setting is essentially an imperfect science, and more often than not, goals do need to be reevaluated, as mentioned before, because some things change, like in terms of newfound knowledge, whether it's from training, whether it's from nutrition, whether it's from that person in general, even from experiences. For example, during a session, or you'll find 2 weeks down the line, someone's not adhered to something, someone's had a personal struggle or things like that that's really adhered them. Really meant that they've struggled to reach their goals, meaning that you have to reevaluate and going, okay, maybe the first one was slightly too realistic, or maybe it was slightly unrealistic. I didn't anticipate it. I didn't anticipate you progressing this quickly. I didn't anticipate all these, without trying to find a kind of word to say it, but issues that someone may encounter, or barriers that people do encounter. They will encounter. Everyone has barriers in one form or another, and these may inhibit your goals, which is fine. It's just then working and reestablishing, resetting the mark, whether it's further, whether it's closer, whether it's changing it slightly, whether it's being realistic and go, actually, you may never achieve that. And that's not saying just because someone doesn't adhere to something to begin with, and they are considered a difficult client, doesn't mean they'll never achieve it. And in fact, telling someone that they're not going to achieve it based on your emotions and the fact that you're angry that they're not doing you, so they're told, isn't an effective way to coach. In fact, it's bullying, and it does make me question sometimes why someone's in this industry if all they want to do is shout at people when they don't get their things. When things don't go their way, or people don't follow what they say, because at the end of the day, people are inspired by influence and they tend to resist authority. So always try to be an influence, especially when it comes to goals, and don't try and be. Do have a sense of authority sometimes. You will need it. It has its place. It works effectively with some people, but not all the time. It needs context, as with everything, not just training and nutrition. So one last thing really is one example of a tool I quite like to use in terms of goal setting procedures is with a lot of female clients, or a lot of clients that have low self-esteem. I often try to associate positive emotions with goals. So really, I don't believe that it's enough to write goals down, but also to get people emotional about them, which can increase motivation and adherence in itself. So what I did essentially, I get some people that want to go on holiday. I've got a couple of clients that want to go on holiday in the next 12 weeks. These clients, I ask these clients, okay, these are your goals. This is how do you want to feel on your holiday? Not just describe everything, describe every positive thing, whether it's just fitting, having that bikini, or that dress that you can't necessarily fit in now. How you felt when you wore that dress, wore that shirt, wore those shorts. Just describe as many positive emotions just by achieving those goals, and you'll see when you ask people to write them down how their eyes light up and they start to have a smirk on their face. People really get excited when you start associating goals with their emotions and trying to really connect with them on an emotional level, rather than just writing them down and being so systematic all the time, because like I said before, it's an imperfect science. It's you're dealing with people, you're dealing with emotions. People work off emotions. I think, reading and listening to Paul Moore, a lot of time he'll say, he mentioned, good podcast actually, he'll mention about the so what test. A lot of people, you'll say, okay, you need to do this, you need to do that. This is your goal. Yeah, and so what? You need to do this to achieve that. So what? So how's that going to make me feel? And really just connect with people on that emotional level, and your goal setting becomes so much easier. I also kind of begun to use self-reflection, encourage self-reflection again. It's just for giving them the chance to give me honest feedback without me flipping or without fear of me getting angry or things like that. Because I know some clients will kind of hide their stuff in the fear of getting told off, maybe from past experiences with other trainers. It's just things like that. It's trying to really identify and set a good structured procedure that allows me to really build upon and improve my services to that person, because whilst I improve my services to one individual, that may not carry over to another. So it's really just self-reflecting upon how I can improve my procedure or how I improve my goal setting systems. So as the one mentioned before, it may work with some people, it may be crap for others. In fact, some people think it's a ridiculous idea and it's a little bit embarrassing, and that's fine. I won't use it for them. I don't need to. We'll use it. We'll use a different system for them to encourage them to achieve their goals, to stay motivated, to get excited. That is just one tool I use, and it's really important just when doing these systems and procedures is trying to read, trying to identify, or even communicate with other coaches, finding ways to really build an effective system to essentially improve performance, because performance is more than just about physiology. It is about psychology, sociology, and pedagogy too. And this is ultimately what this podcast is about. So I think I'm going to wrap up there. I think that's everything. I hope you enjoy the podcast. If you have any questions, if you have any feedback, then please let me know. You can either comment below. If you have any, feel free to fire as many questions you want on Twitter. It's Jake_Gifford. Hope you enjoyed this one. I hope you utilize the tool and really just spend a bit more time with goal setting, because I definitely think it's a valuable tool. It's going to be actually this next podcast is going to be almost a double whammy. Going to condense them a little bit more. So I'd really appreciate it if everyone just shared the next few or shared the previous few. If you just listen to all of them as much as possible, give me feedback, or whether it's good or bad. Essentially, I'm trying to give this information to everybody to help improve their coaching. And if there's anything that people don't agree with, then I'm more than happy to discuss. But thank you for tuning in, and I hope to hear from many of you. Goodbye.